The crystal ballroom sparkled under 1,000 lights as Emma Harrison stood alone in the corner, holding a glass of champagne that had gone warm in her hands. Around her, wealthy guests laughed and clinked their glasses, celebrating another successful charity auction. Her husband, Victor Ashford, was surrounded by admirers across the room, his confident voice carrying over the music as he discussed his latest business acquisition. Emma watched him from a distance. The way she always did. She had learned over the years that her place was to remain invisible. A decorative piece that enhanced his image but never drew attention away from him. Tonight, she wore a stunning emerald dress that hugged her figure perfectly, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo. Yet despite her beauty, she felt like a shadow. The evening had started like any other. Victor barely acknowledged her presence in the limousine ride over, his eyes fixed on his phone as he barked orders to his assistant. When they arrived, he stepped out first, leaving her to follow several paces behind. No offered hand, no warm smile, just the expectation that she would know her role. Emma had played this part for 6 years. 6 long years of being the perfect wife to a man who treated her like an accessory. She remembered the early days of their relationship, when Victor had seemed different. He was ambitious and driven, yes, but there had been moments of tenderness, or perhaps she had imagined them, seeing what she wanted to see instead of what was really there. As the night wore on, Emma found herself drifting toward the balcony, needing air and space from the suffocating pretense. The cool evening breeze touched her face, and she closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of honesty. How much longer could she continue living this way? How many more nights would she spend feeling utterly alone while standing beside her husband? She heard footsteps behind her and turned, expecting to see another guest seeking refuge from the crowded ballroom. Instead, it was Victor, his jaw tight with irritation. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, his tone sharp. "I just needed some air," Emma replied softly. "The Hendersons are asking about you. They want to meet my wife." The way he said it made it clear that she was failing in her duties. "You need to come back inside." Emma took a breath and moved toward the door, but as she passed him, she instinctively reached out and placed her hand gently on his arm. It was a small gesture, an attempt at connection, a hope that maybe tonight would be different. Victor stopped abruptly and looked down at her hand as if it were something offensive. Then he leaned close, his voice dropping to a cold whisper that only she could hear. "Never touch me in public." The words hit her like a physical blow. Emma felt the blood drain from her face as shame and hurt flooded through her. She pulled her hand back quickly, her fingers trembling. Around them, other guests chatted and laughed, completely unaware of the tiny destruction that had just occurred. Victor straightened his tie and walked back into the ballroom without another glance, leaving Emma standing frozen on the threshold. In that moment, something inside her cracked. It was not a loud break, but a quiet fracture that had been forming for years. Finally splitting completely, she followed him back inside mechanically, going through the motions of greeting the Hendersons and making polite conversation. But her mind was elsewhere, replaying that whispered command over and over. "Never touch me in public?" As if her affection was something shameful, something to be hidden away. The ride home was silent. Victor scrolled through emails while Emma stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. When they arrived at their mansion, a sprawling estate that had never felt like home, Victor headed straight to his study without a word. Emma climbed the stairs to their bedroom, each step feeling heavier than the last. She sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the emerald dress, and looked around the room. Everything was perfect and expensive and cold. Just like her marriage, she thought about the woman she used to be before Victor. Emma had been a teacher, passionate about literature and helping students discover their love of reading. She had friends, dreams, a small apartment filled with books and laughter. Then Victor entered her life like a whirlwind, sweeping her into a world of luxury and promises. "I will give you everything," he had said, and he had. Everything except what mattered. Everything except respect, partnership, love. Emma stood and walked to her closet, pulling out a suitcase. Her hands moved with surprising calm as she began folding clothes and placing them inside. She did not pack everything, just enough. Enough to start over. Enough to leave. As dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Emma zipped the suitcase closed. She looked at herself in the mirror one last time. Her makeup was smudged from silent tears. Her hair had come loose from its pins. But her eyes held a determination that had been missing for years. She wrote a note, keeping it simple. I am tired of being invisible. I am leaving. She placed it on the nightstand where Victor would eventually find it. Though she doubted he would notice her absence for hours, Emma walked down the grand staircase for the last time, her footsteps echoing in the empty house. The morning staff had not yet arrived. She left her wedding ring on the marble table in the foyer, next to a vase of fresh flowers that someone else had arranged. Outside, the world was waking up. Birds sang in the garden, and the air smelled fresh and full of possibility. Emma called a taxi and waited by the gates, her suitcase beside her. When the car arrived, she did not look back at the mansion. There was nothing there worth remembering. The driver tried to make conversation, but Emma gave short, polite answers. Her mind was racing with practical concerns. Where would she go? She had left behind the comfort and security that Victor provided, but she realized she did not care. Anything was better than being trapped in a gilded cage. She checked into a small hotel on the other side of town. It's a modest place that was clean and quiet. The room was tiny compared to the master suite she had left behind, but it felt like freedom. Emma sat on the simple bed and allowed herself to cry, really cry. For the first time in years, the tears were not just for the marriage. She was leaving, but for all the versions of herself she had lost along the way. For the compromises she had made, for the silence she had kept, for the light she had allowed to dim. But even through the tears, Emma felt something else stirring inside her. It was small and fragile, but undeniably present. It was hope. Over the next few days, Emma began taking practical steps. She contacted an old friend from her teaching days who helped her find a small apartment to rent. It was nothing fancy, just a studio with large windows that let in plenty of light, but it was hers. She bought groceries, arranged her few belongings, and started building a new routine. Victor called repeatedly, but she did not answer. He sent texts ranging from angry demands to almost apologetic questions, but she did not respond. His assistant showed up at the hotel, but Emma had already checked out. She needed space and time to figure out who she was without him. One morning, while sitting in a coffee shop and browsing job listings, Emma felt truly alive for the first time in years. The future was uncertain and frightening, but it was hers to shape, and that made all the difference. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Emma's tiny studio apartment, casting warm patterns across the wooden floor. She stood in her small kitchen, making coffee in a simple machine that was worlds away from the elaborate espresso setup in Victor's mansion. Yet this coffee tasted better, richer somehow. Because she had chosen it herself. 3 months had passed since Emma walked away from her marriage. 3 months of rebuilding, rediscovering, and slowly remembering who she was beneath the layers of silence and submission. The apartment was modest, but filled with things that made her smile. Secondhand books, stacked on shelves, ants growing on the windowsill. Photographs of friends she had reconnected with after years of isolation. Finding work had been challenging at first. Emma's teaching credentials were still valid, but her years away from the profession had created gaps in her resume that required explanation. She applied to several schools without success, each rejection stinging but not breaking her resolve. Then one afternoon, while browsing online job boards, Emma discovered an opening at Meridian Education Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing educational resources to underserved communities. The position was for a program coordinator, someone who could develop curriculum and train teachers in innovative methods. It was not traditional classroom teaching, but something about it called to her. Emma spent hours crafting her application, pouring her passion for education into every sentence. She described her teaching philosophy, her belief that every student deserved access to quality learning, and her desire to make a meaningful difference. When she pressed send, she allowed herself a small moment of hope. 2 weeks later, she received a call. The voice on the other end was warm and professional, introducing himself as Julian Cross, the director of the foundation. He wanted to schedule an interview. Emma arrived at the Meridian Foundation offices on a Tuesday morning, wearing a simple navy dress that she had bought from a consignment shop. The building was unpretentious, located in a converted warehouse in a revitalized part of the city. Inside, the space was open and bright. With exposed brick walls covered in student artwork and photographs of smiling children, Julian met her in the lobby, and Emma was immediately struck by his presence. He was tall, with kind eyes and a genuine smile that reached them. His handshake was firm but gentle, and when he spoke, he looked directly at her as if her words truly mattered. "Thank you for coming, Emma," he said, leading her to a conference room. "Your application really stood out. The passion you described for educational equity resonated with everything we are trying to accomplish here." The interview lasted over an hour, but it felt like a conversation rather than an interrogation. Julian asked thoughtful questions about her teaching philosophy and listened intently to her answers. He shared the foundation's mission and vision, his enthusiasm evident in every word. Unlike Victor, who dominated every conversation, Julian created space for dialogue, for exchange, for mutual respect. Emma found herself relaxing, speaking more freely than she had in years. She shared ideas about project-based learning and community engagement, surprised by how easily the thoughts flowed. Julian nodded along, occasionally jotting notes, but mostly just listening with complete attention. "You know," he said toward the end of the interview, "we have been looking for someone who understands that education is not just about information transfer. It is about empowerment, about giving people the tools to transform their own lives." He paused, his expression thoughtful. "I think you understand that deeply." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. When was the last time someone had seen her, really seen her, and valued what they found? "When can you start?" Julian asked with a smile. Emma blinked in surprise. "Are you offering me the position?" "If you want it, yes. I believe you would be an incredible asset to our team." She accepted immediately, unable to keep the joy from her voice. As she left the building, Emma felt lighter than she had in years. This was more than just a job. It was validation that she had something valuable to offer the world. Her first weeks at the Iridian Foundation were intense but exhilarating. The team was small but passionate, everyone dedicated to the mission. Emma threw herself into the work, developing training materials, visiting partner schools, and meeting with teachers hungry for new strategies to reach their students. Julian proved to be an exceptional leader. He trusted his team, offered support without micromanaging, and celebrated both successes and learning moments from failures. He had a way of making everyone feel valued, of recognizing contributions both large and small. Emma often found herself working late, not because anyone demanded it, but because she loved what she was doing. One evening, as she was packing up her laptop, Julian knocked on her office door. "Still here?" he asked with a gentle smile. "You know, dedication is wonderful, but you also need to take care of yourself." Emma laughed softly. "I could say the same to you. Your car is still in the parking lot too." "Fair point," leaned against the doorframe. "I was actually about to grab some dinner. There is a great little Thai place around the corner. Would you like to join me? We could discuss that new curriculum proposal you mentioned." Emma hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. They walked to the restaurant through streets filled with the energy of evening, talking easily about work and then gradually about other things. Julian asked about her life, her interests. What brought her to education in the first place? She found herself sharing stories from her teaching days, about the students who had touched her heart and the moments that reminded her why this work mattered. Julian listened with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions that showed he was truly engaged.
Yes.
"What made you leave teaching?" he asked gently as they waited for their food. Emma paused, choosing her words carefully. "I got married and my husband wanted me to focus on supporting his career. At the time, I thought that was what I should do. I thought that was love. And now I know better. Real love does not ask you to become smaller. It encourages you to grow." Julian nodded slowly. "Sounds like you learned that lesson the hard way." "I did, but I am grateful for it, even though it hurt. Sometimes we need to lose ourselves to remember who we are." They talked until the restaurant began closing, conversation flowing naturally from topic to topic. Julian shared his own story, how he had worked in corporate finance before realizing his heart was not in maximizing profits but in maximizing human potential. He spoke about his niece, who struggled in school until one teacher saw her learning difference and adapted the approach, changing everything. "That experience showed me the power of one person who truly cares," he said. It inspired me to create something that could multiply that impact. As they walked back to the parking lot, Emma realized how long it had been since she had felt this comfortable with someone. Julian did not make her feel less than or invisible. He made her feel seen, heard, valued. Over the following weeks, their professional relationship deepened into friendship. They grabbed coffee before meetings, shared lunch while brainstorming ideas, and stayed late working on proposals side by side. Julian had a way of bringing out the best in Emma, encouraging her boldest ideas while offering gentle guidance when needed. The rest of the team noticed the connection, smiling knowingly when Julian and Emma walked in together or finished each other's sentences during presentations. But there was nothing inappropriate about it, just a genuine partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Meanwhile, across the city, Victor was experiencing a very different transformation. After Emma left, he had expected her to return within days. When she did not, he oscillated between anger and confusion. How dare she leave him? Did she not understand everything he had given her? But as weeks turned into months, something began to shift. The mansion felt too large and too empty. The silence that he once preferred now felt suffocating. He found himself looking for Emma in habitual moments, expecting to see her reading in the library or arranging flowers in the foyer. His business continued to thrive. But the satisfaction he once derived from deals and acquisitions felt hollow. He attended social events alone, making excuses about Emma being unwell or traveling, but people began to talk. Where was the beautiful wife who used to accompany him? Victor tried to bury himself in work, but thoughts of Emma kept surfacing. He remembered small things he had never appreciated, the way she always had his favorite coffee ready in the morning, how she listened patiently when he complained about difficult clients, the softness in her eyes when she looked at him in those early days, he remembered. With growing shame, the countless times he had dismissed her, ignored her, made her feel small. The memory of that night at the charity gala haunted him particularly. Never touch me in public. How could he have said something so cruel? Victor began driving past places they used to go together, though Emma had rarely chosen their destinations. He found himself wanting to apologize, to explain, to somehow make her understand that he had not meant to hurt her. But pride kept him from reaching out, and a growing fear that even if he did, it would be too late. Then came the day that changed everything. Victor was attending a business networking event at a downtown hotel when he saw her. Emma was across the room laughing at something a tall man beside her had said. She looked radiant, wearing a simple dress that Victor had never seen before. Her hair was different, styled in loose waves that framed her face, but it was her expression that struck him most. She looked genuinely happy. Victor felt something twist in his chest. Who was this man making his wife laugh? He moved closer, trying to appear casual until he could hear their conversation. The pilot program exceeded all our expectations, Emma was saying, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. The teachers reported a 40% increase in student engagement. That is incredible, Emma, the man replied, and Victor recognized him then. Julian Cross. They had crossed paths in business circles before, though they moved in different sectors. Your curriculum design made all the difference. You have a real gift for this. Victor watched as Julian's hand rested briefly on Emma's shoulder, a gesture of warmth and respect. He watched Emma smile in response, comfortable and confident in a way she had never been with him. Jealousy surged through Victor, hot and unexpected. This was his wife. How dare another man stand so close to her, speak to her with such familiarity, make her glow with happiness that Victor had never managed to create. He wanted to storm over and reclaim what was his, but something stopped him. Perhaps it was the way Emma carried herself, the strength in her posture, the light in her eyes. She was not the same woman who had left him. She had transformed into someone he barely recognized, someone more vibrant and alive than he had ever allowed her to be. Victor stood frozen across the room, his glass of scotch forgotten in his hand as he watched Emma and Julian continue their conversation. Other attendees moved around him, networking and exchanging business cards. But he could focus on nothing except his wife laughing with another man. No, he corrected himself bitterly, his former wife. The divorce papers had arrived at his office 2 weeks ago and he had thrown them in a drawer, unable to face the reality they represented. Emma had not asked for anything in the settlement. No claim to his fortune, no demand for the mansion or cars or jewelry. She only wanted her freedom, and somehow, That hurt more than any financial demand could have. It meant she valued independence from him more than any material comfort he could provide. As Victor watched, Julian leaned closer to Emma, saying something that made her throw her head back in genuine laughter. The sound carried across the room, and Victor realized with a shock that he could not remember the last time he had heard her laugh like that. Had she ever laughed that way with him? The honest answer made his chest tighten with regret. Unable to stop himself, Victor began moving through the crowd toward them. He told himself he just wanted to talk, to see how she was doing, but the jealousy burning through him told a different story. As he approached, Emma looked up and their eyes met. The laughter faded from her face, replaced by a calm composure that was somehow worse than anger would have been. "Victor," she said evenly, acknowledging him with a slight nod. "Emma." His voice came out rougher than intended. "I did not expect to see you here. The Meridian Foundation was invited to present our educational initiatives." She replied, gesturing to the banner behind them. "This is Julian Cross, our director." "Julian, this is Victor Ashford." Julian extended his hand with professional courtesy. "We have met before, I believe. Good to see you again." Victor shook his hand, measuring the man who had somehow succeeded where he had failed. Julian was not as wealthy or powerful in business terms, but he possessed something Victor suddenly recognized as far more valuable: integrity and warmth that drew people to him naturally. "So you are working now?" Victor said to Emma, trying to keep his tone neutral but failing to hide the underlying accusation. "I always provided everything you needed. You did not have to do this." Emma's expression hardened slightly. "I am not doing this because I have to, Victor. I am doing it because I want to, because it matters to me." Teaching children from poor neighborhoods? He could not keep the dismissive tone from his voice, old habits dying hard. "You could have volunteered for any charity board in the city. You did not need to actually work." "That is exactly the problem," Emma said softly, but her words carried steel beneath the gentleness. "You never understood that I needed purpose, not just comfort. You never understood me at all." Julian cleared his throat delicately. "Emma, I am going to check on the presentation setup. Take your time." He squeezed her shoulder briefly, a gesture of support that made Victor's jaw clench. Before walking away with the grace to give them privacy, Victor and Emma stood facing each other, the noise of the event fading into background static. Up close, Victor could see the changes in her more clearly. She had lost the tension she always carried in his presence, the constant worry about saying or doing the wrong thing. Her shoulders were relaxed, her gaze direct and unafraid. "You look different," he said finally. "I am different. I am myself again." "Emma, about that night at the gala, what I said to you." Victor struggled with words that did not come naturally to him. "I was wrong. I should not have spoken to you that way. You should not have. But that was just one moment in years of making me feel invisible." Emma's voice remained steady. "Do you know what the saddest part is, Victor? I do not think you even realized you were doing it, dismissing my feelings, my opinions, my very existence, unless it served your purposes." "I gave you everything," Victor protested, falling back on the defense he had repeated to himself countless times. "You gave me things," Emma corrected gently, "but you never gave me respect. You never gave me partnership. You never gave me the one thing that actually mattered, the feeling that I was enough just as I was." Victor felt the truth of her words like a blow. "I can change. We can start over. Just come back." Emma shook her head slowly, and he saw pity in her eyes that wounded his pride more than anger ever could. "You do not want me back, Victor. You want the idea of me, the possession you lost. You are not here because you love me. You are here because someone else valued what you threw away, and your ego cannot handle it." That is not true. But even as he said it, Victor wondered if she was right. Was this love or just wounded pride? When he imagined Emma returning, did he picture actually changing their dynamic? Or did he just want everything back the way it was, with him in control? "Look at you," Emma continued, her voice softening with something that might have been compassion. "You are not happy to see me thriving. You are angry because I am doing it without you, with someone else. That is not love, Victor. That is ownership." Across the room, Julian had returned and was watching them with quiet concern. Victor followed Emma's gaze and saw the way her expression softened when she looked at the other man. It was a look she used to give Victor in the beginning, before he systematically destroyed her hope. "You care about him," Victor stated, the realization hitting hard. Emma took a moment before responding. "Julian is a good man. He sees me as a partner, values my thoughts, encourages my growth. He makes me feel like I matter, not as an accessory, but as a person." She paused. "But this is not about him, Victor. Even if Julian did not exist, I still would not come back. I left because I needed to find myself again, and I have. I am finally living instead of just existing." Victor felt something crumble inside him, the last fragment of hope he had been clutching. "So that is it? 6 years of marriage means nothing?" "It means I learned what I will never accept again," Emma said firmly. "I learned that I deserve better. I deserve to be with someone who is proud to hold my hand in public, who celebrates my successes instead of feeling threatened by them, who loves me for who I am instead of who they want me to be. And you think he can give you that?" Victor could not keep the bitterness from his voice, nodding toward Julian. "I think I can give that to myself," Emma replied. "I do not need a man to complete me anymore. If Julian and I become something more, it will be because we choose each other as equals, not because I need saving or he needs decorating." The distinction was subtle but profound, and Victor finally understood how completely he had failed her. Emma had not been looking for a rescue when she married him. She had been looking for a partner, and he had turned her into a possession instead. "I am sorry," Victor said, and for the first time, he truly meant it. "I am sorry for all the ways I made you feel small. I am sorry I did not appreciate what I had until it was gone. I am sorry I was not the husband you deserved." Emma's eyes glistened slightly, but her voice remained steady. "I appreciate you saying that, Victor, truly, but an apology does not undo years of hurt. And it does not mean we belong together. Sometimes the best thing people can do is let each other go. So this is really goodbye." It was not a question. "This is really goodbye," Emma confirmed. "Sign the papers, Victor. Let us both move forward." Victor nodded slowly, accepting what he could not change. As Emma turned to walk away, he called out once more. "Emma, I hope he makes you happy. I hope he gives you everything I could not." She turned back with a sad smile. "That is the first kind thing you have said to me in years. Thank you for that." Then she walked across the room to where Julian waited, and Victor watched as the other man's face lit up at her approach. The following weeks brought a strange mix of grief and clarity for Victor. He signed the divorce papers and sent them back without contest. He walked through the mansion and realized it had never been a home, just a showcase of his success. He attended business meetings and closed deals, but the thrill that once drove him felt meaningless. One night, sitting alone in his study with a glass of expensive whiskey, Victor finally allowed himself to fully feel the loss. Not just of Emma, but of the man he might have been if pride and ego had not blinded him. He thought about all the moments he had dismissed her, all the times he had prioritized his image over her feelings, all the ways he had taken her for granted, the jealousy that had consumed him when he saw her with Julian, transformed into something different. Not acceptance exactly, but understanding. Emma deserved happiness, and if she found it with someone who treated her well, then Victor had no right to stand in the way. His chapter in her story was over, closed by his own actions. Meanwhile, Emma's life continued to blossom. The work at Meridian Foundation grew and expanded, reaching more schools and impacting more students. Emma poured her passion into developing innovative programs, traveling to meet teachers and students, seeing firsthand the difference education could make in transforming lives. Her relationship with Julian evolved naturally, built on the foundation of mutual respect and shared values. There were no grand declarations or rushed commitments, just a steady deepening of connection. They took walks through the city parks on weekends, cooked dinner together in her small apartment, stayed up late discussing books and ideas and dreams. One evening, as they sat on her tiny balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Julian took her hand gently. "Emma, I need you to know something," he said softly. "Whatever this is between us, whatever it becomes, I will never ask you to be anything other than who you are. Your dreams, your work, your independence, they are all part of what makes you extraordinary. I do not want to complete you. I just want to walk beside you." Emma felt tears prick her eyes, But they were good tears, healing tears. "That is all I have ever wanted," she whispered. "To be seen, to be valued, to be enough exactly as I am." "You are more than enough," Julian said, his eyes holding hers with absolute sincerity. "You are remarkable." When he kissed her, it was tender and respectful, asking rather than demanding, offering rather than taking. Emma leaned into the kiss, feeling something click into place in her heart. This was what love should feel like: safe, equal, empowering. Months passed. Victor eventually sold the mansion, unable to bear the emptiness any longer. He moved into a modern apartment downtown and slowly began rebuilding his life with a new perspective. He started attending therapy, working through the patterns that had destroyed his marriage. He reached out to his sister, whom he had neglected for years, and began repairing that relationship. The business success that once defined him became less important than the person he was becoming. Victor started volunteering with a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs, finding unexpected satisfaction in helping others succeed rather than just accumulating his own victories. It did not erase his regrets, but it gave him purpose beyond his ego. A year after the divorce was finalized, Victor saw Emma once more, purely by chance. He was having coffee in a small cafe when she walked in with Julian, their fingers intertwined, both laughing about something. Victor felt the familiar pang in his chest, but this time it was different. Not jealousy or regret exactly, but bittersweet acknowledgement. Emma looked truly happy, her face glowing with contentment that had nothing to do with wealth or status and everything to do with being authentically herself. Julian looked at her with open adoration, the kind of respect and love that Victor now understood he had never offered, as they waited for their order. Emma glanced around the cafe and her eyes landed on Victor. For a moment, time suspended. Then Emma smiled, a genuine smile that held no bitterness, and gave him a small wave. Victor raised his coffee cup in acknowledgement, a gesture of peace and letting go. She turned back to Julian, who was saying something that made her laugh, and they left the cafe hand in hand, disappearing into the busy street. Victor sat there a while longer, finishing his coffee and watching people pass by the window. Somewhere in his chest, he felt the final thread of hope break. But it was not painful. It was release. He pulled out his phone and texted his therapist to schedule an extra session. He had work to do on himself, patterns to break, a person to become. Emma had found her happy ending, and Victor realized that his task now was to create his own. Not by finding another woman to control, but by becoming the kind of man worthy of real partnership. As the sun set over the city, painting the buildings in golden light, Victor made a quiet promise to himself. He would learn from his mistakes. He would become better. And someday, if love found him again, he would treat it with the care and respect it deserved. Emma's story had taught him the most painful and important lesson of his life. Love is not about possession or control. Real love lifts up, respects, and celebrates the other person. It makes space for growth rather than demanding smallness. It values partnership over dominance. Victor had learned this truth too late to save his marriage, but perhaps not too late to save himself. And in the end, that would have to be enough. The Emma's transformation from invisible wife to empowered woman was complete. She had walked through fire and emerged stronger, clearer, more herself than ever before. Her happiness came not from finding a new man to define her, but from reclaiming the woman she had always been beneath the layers of silence. And somewhere across the city, Victor began the long journey of becoming someone who might deserve love, learning that the hardest person to face is yourself. And the most important relationship to heal is the one you have with your own reflection. Some endings are not happy in the traditional sense, but they are necessary. And sometimes the greatest love story is not about finding the perfect partner, but about finding yourself again after losing your way.